Oh man, on a Saturday, no doubt. On a frickin' Saturday. Who does that? Huh? Who does that? Hold on, let me do a couple quick things here to get everything in a row and let some folks load in. I can't remember the last time I did anything like this on a Saturday. So this is rare and there's a reason for it, and I'll be mentioning the reason for it before we sign out. But yeah, this is uh this is a special thing that I don't normally do. And I hope you're all well, and I appreciate you. What's up, Hobo Roadie? Thank you for the cat. Up, YouTube is up. YouTube's up. Good, good, good. Good, good, good. Is Rockfin up? Rockfin is up. Rockfin is up. All right, we got everything up. Why am I talking like this? What is this anyway? I don't know. It kind of sounds like Captain Kirk, William Shatner, dare I say, meets somebody else. I don't even know who. What is this voice? I have no clue. What's up, everybody? Happy Saturday. Welcome to a special Get Your News On with Ron stream where we're going to be talking election stuff. We're going to I don't like to call this like a voter's guide because I don't tell people who to vote for or how to vote. I'd like to think of this as more of a support group, more of a, if you're anything like me and you look at your ballot and most of the time you're going, oh shit, are you kidding me? This is terrible. Fuck. If that's you, this is the stream for you to just make you feel a little bit better about everything and to make you feel a little less alone. Because that's how I just sat and I cursed at my ballot multiple times. Now, that being said, there were a couple things that I was thrilled to fill in the bubble for. And we're going to talk about all this. But for the most part, you're just, are you kidding me? Shit. That was me. I filled it out with my wife, and she was just like, dude, I know, but come on. This isn't. And I was just, this is so depressing. I don't even take the I voted sticker because I'm just like, I don't want to remember this. Are you kidding me? And I know that a lot of people, you feel that way too. And if you're anything like me, you still vote. Now I don't tell people who to vote for. I don't even tell you definitely vote. I know some people, they choose not to vote. They have their reasons for it. I disagree. I think you should vote. I recommend it. But if you don't, I'm not going to be the one who dies on that hill yelling at you to vote. And the reason I'm not that guy is because there are many tools in the toolkit of change. Voting is just one of them, and voting is an overamplified one. And it is also a small one in comparison to other things. In comparison to what, Ron? Strikes, worker strikes, union efforts, protests. That's all I would argue more effective as far as bringing in status quo shifting change than voting is. Again, I'm not saying don't vote. I encourage it. I do it. And that's a whole long discussion. We won't necessarily get down that rabbit hole as to like, well, why would you still vote? But I would just say to the people out there who think, "Oh, I'm making a big statement by not voting." You're really not. If you feel like you shouldn't participate in that manner, I'm not going to be the one who yells at you to do so. I get where you're coming from. But if you think like, "Oh, I'm proving something, I'm sticking it to the establishment," you're really not, because we have some of the lowest voter turnout out of any democratic experiment out there. They like it that way. The establishment loves it that way. They'd love it if it was even lower. Local elections have an average turnout of 27%. Did you know that? Probably not, because they don't talk about it. I know there's people out there like, well, if we had an election and nobody showed up, it would be all over the news. No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. I mean, if the voter turnout was a little lower, then they just wouldn't talk about it. And they would love that because that would mean that they could get their way and they wouldn't even need to try to sweep anything under the rug, really. So that's why I do advocate voting. I think that, you know, our elections are very compromised and our system is very effed. And it is still a small tool in the toolkit of change. But I think by not doing so, you're kind of giving them exactly what they want. By not even trying, by not even making an effort. I think that's even worse. So that's my take on it. Double K, thank you very much for the super chat contribution. Thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot. Oh, by the way, I should specify something here. That doesn't mean that I don't leave things blank on a ballot. I do that often, especially living in a place like California. But we're gonna get into it, and I'm gonna speak specifically about California just because that's where I happen to live. But if you don't live in California, we're also gonna speak more thematically, more generally. And again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not even here to tell you to vote or not vote. That is a personal choice. I recommend voting. I encourage it. But if you don't do it, I can't say like I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. Which I know is like an interesting place to be in. But, I have some friends who are, anarchists and stuff like that. They don't vote. I get where they're coming from. Again, don't agree, but I get it. So anyway, having blabbered all that, let's start with a more thematic thing and a specific thing. So I live in California. Now, one thing I do recommend, I always recommend, no matter where you live, I recommend using supplemental materials, not just taking your own assessment of things without any supplemental reading. And there are some voter guides out there that I think do a pretty good job. In my area, the one that I recommend the most is Knock LA. Knock LA it's called the Knock LA Progressive Voter Guide. Word progressive, what does that even mean these days? It's just a word people use for simplification's sake. They do a darn good job. They do a very good job. They have a very good voter guide. Other voter guides that I recommend is DSA. I think DSA makes a good voter guide. When I say that, that doesn't mean I agree with the DSA on everything. I don't. I've disagreed with a lot of strategic decisions they have made. Nor does it agree. Excuse me. Nor does it mean that I agree with every single thing I've ever seen in their guide. I haven't. But I think overall, it's a pretty good guide. It shouldn't be your only thing. No one guide should be your only thing. But those are supplemental materials that can kind of help you clear a path as far as what you're gonna do. So, but the one I recommend the most in the LA area, if you're in the LA area, is Knock LA. And yeah, I think DSA does a good voter guide. But again, look, do your own searching as well. What's going on, Rockfin? Are you okay? Yeah, Rockfin's okay. All right. So, but I do recommend supplemental things. And when I say supplemental things, don't just limit that to people who have endorsed a certain thing. Like, kind of look at just regular guides and what they're recommending, kind of look at news articles, et cetera, et cetera. I know it's a lot of legwork, but it's something you got to do. Why? Because sometimes ballot measures and propositions, sometimes they're great things that you should be excited to vote for, and they're going to help your community if they get passed. Other times, they say they're about a certain thing, but you got to dig a little deeper and you find out, oh, wait, no, this is corporate bullshit. That happens everywhere. Everywhere. That happens in every single state. I sometimes people they're just like, well, that's just a thing in California, Rod. No, it's everywhere. That's everywhere. You got to read between the lines. I'll give you an example in California for us to go on, though. Here's one, and this is from the Knock LA Voter Guide. Income tax to fund electric vehicles. This is Proposition 30. Here's what Knock LA says about this. Proposition 30 sounds really good on its surface. It would impose an additional annual 1.75 tax on individual income over $2 million, with 80% of the resulting revenue go towards funding zero emissions vehicles programs. Gee, how could you be against that? Oh, wait a second. 20% towards wildfire prevention and response programs. Those are all good things. The state estimates that Prop 30 would generate 3.5 to 5 billion annually. That sounds great. You're going to tax the rich to fund programs that help against climate change. Who would be against that? Well, let's keep reading. Here's the catch. Well, the proposition is supported by several environment and public health groups. Its largest proponent is Lyft, the tech mega giant. Lyft has spent $25 million in support of the proposition. Governor Newsom is against this proposition, apparently. That doesn't make or break anything for me. I think Governor Newsom is terrible, but he is highlighting that in his No on Prop 30 campaign, allegedly. I haven't seen any of this firsthand, but this is according to the Knock LA website. Currently, Lyft reimburses drivers for charging EVs out of its own pocket. Okay, that's good. And since the state will require Lyft to transition 90% of its fleet to zero emissions vehicles by 2030, the cost of that reimbursement will go up. Now, if the proposition passes, Lyft will pass that cost on to state-funded charging stations, which means it'll be passed on to all of us eventually, allowing it to pay drivers less and make more money. Proposition 30 is, in essence, a corporate cash grab disguised in the trappings of environmental activism. They go on to say, and I agree with this sentiment, California and the rest of the country badly need to reduce their emissions to keep our planet livable. This, however, is not the way to do it. Now, you might hear all of this, and you might think, you know what? I think that the end still justifies the means, and I'm going to pay for this even though it's helping Lyft do shady shit. You might reach that conclusion. Some environmental groups did. Other environmental groups didn't. They said, no, no, no. This is a corporate giveaway. This is not the way to go. And this is not the type of legislation we need. I can understand either perspective. Again, that's why measures are complicated. Ballots are complicated. And by the way, they write it this way on purpose because when corporations really want to get away with doing shady shit, they put it under the disguise of having the right to work, of having the innovation, whatever it is. And really, it's just a bunch of corporate bullshit. They do this in every single state in the union. This isn't unique to California. This isn't unique to your state. This happens everywhere. So you really got to read between the lines and you really got to check a lot. And sometimes you just have to make a judgment call. Paul puts it best. Complicated word salads. Exactly. Complicated word salads. Also the name of my next album. No, I'm just kidding. That would be a cool album name, though, wouldn't it? That's a really cool album name. I should call my album that. Complicated word salads. Paul, if that's okay with you, I'll consider it. I don't know what I'm hopefully going to do another album in 2023. Anyway, back to voting. So that's the judgment call you got to make. Personally, I went no. And the reason I went no is because, I think that helping out Lyft and Uber, the way they have really decimated California and the way they got their Prop 22 through, which will allow them to continue to exploit drivers, and they're trying to see what they can get away with in other states too. I think that the poison pills outweigh the benefits. And another reason I feel that way is because, look, is EV a step in a better direction? Yes. Is it the be-all and end-all solution? No. No, it is not. Getting everybody off fossil fueled cars, that's a good thing. Yes, absolutely. And electric cars, even with all the issues in the batteries and stuff like that, which there are still a lot of issues, it's not perfect by any means. But is it better? Yes, it is better. But it is not a be-all, end-all permanent fix. Not by any means. Not even if we advance the batteries and make them more efficient to make, which I think we will do. Even if charging stations become everywhere, are everywhere, which I think eventually will happen. Is that better than what we have now? Yes, it is better than what we have now. Is it a permanent fix? No, it's not. You also need to combine that with extensive public transportation and extensive renewable public transportation. Trains, buses, lines, rail lines, street lines. Stuff that, by the way, we used to have. Stuff that we used to have everywhere. And then because of the car companies and the oil companies, they decimated all of it. Because you want to get in your car, baby. America. So, EVs alone, again, they are better, yes. But they still have a lot of issues, and they're not the permanent fix. They're not the permanent fix. So when you're hyper-focused on that, then I'm going to say, okay, if this is really just a giveaway to a Lyft, then I'm going to say, no, this isn't the type of legislation we need. This is not the type of legislation we need. So, but I can see how some people they'll be like, yeah, but Ron, the ends justify the means because if that's your perspective, that's fine. But I'm telling you what mine is. So those are the things to kind of use that as a theme. Those are the kind of things you have to be careful of when you look at any ballot measure. And you really have to read between the lines. That's why, like, I'm not, whenever someone just approaches me out of nowhere, they're like, hey, I mean, we had this one proposition, Prop 28. It's all about more arts funding in schools. Who would be against that? And then when I read more about it, I voted for it. But, they were like, "Hey, are you?" And I'm like, Let me do a little more reading first because yeah, that sounds great, but let me make sure that's what it is first." Oh, that is what it is? Okay, great. You got a yes vote. But you got to be very careful, especially since there's I saw a report from More Perfect Union this morning. Apparently there's different organizations out there that are campaigning on things that are doing the opposite of what they say they're doing. They're doing these minimum wage increase campaigns that are actually going against legislation that hires the minimum wage, and they count on you to not read the details. So they're like deliberately lying, basically. So my point is, you gotta read different sources. You gotta do some digging. You gotta turn to some guides you can trust and use that as a launch pad to do your digging. And it involves effort. I mean, it really does. If lately I've been voting by mail, which, again, if you do that, you got to track your ballot. You got to make sure you're signed up for all the notifications to make sure your ballot was received, to make sure it was counted, excuse me. Yeah, voting's not easy. And there is a level of responsibility to it. I think that's one of the many reasons why more people don't do it. Um, and they don't make it easy for you. And again, this is by design. This is by design. They suppress the vote in so many ways in this country through gerrymandering, through things like the Electoral College and superdelegates when you're going federal, through different restrictive ID laws and stuff like that, through different mechanisms like, oh, your address is wrong, so we're gonna through purging of the rolls. They do that all the time. So I know people love to cling to that quote that Emma Goldman allegedly said, where, well, if voting made a difference, they'd make it illegal. And by the way, if you're going to say that, I hope you're as active as Emma Goldman was. Mark Twain said that. No, he didn't. Mark Twain never said that. Allegedly, Emma Goldman did. And if you're going to make that statement and use that as justification for not voting, okay, I get where you're coming from. And I don't actually despise that quote. I think it's a very intriguing, thought-compelling quote. But if you're going to say that, I hope you're doing as much as Emma Goldman did, or at least something comparable to Emma Goldman. Emma Goldman did a lot. So that's my take on that. But my thought on that is just like they say, oh, well, if voting made a difference, they'd make it illegal. Okay, but if voting didn't make a difference at all, why do they suppress it so much? If people showing up and voting made no difference whatsoever to their agenda, why do they suppress it so much? I think they suppress it so much because they want to get away with what they want to get away with. And if you show up and there's a bunch of transparent results there of people saying, no, we don't want this, or yes, we do want this, it's harder for them to kind of get their way, isn't it? It's harder. If more than 27% of people showed up for a local election, it'd be a lot harder for real estate developers to make a city their playground. But they know that nobody shows up for local shit. So real estate developers, who they realize the power that you have in local politics, they're able to just make a playground of most cities in the country. I mean, and again, I get it if you don't vote. I'm just explaining why I still encourage voting despite all of the corruption. And, local is by far the most important, by the way. Whenever people say these sentiments, I mean, here's another cliche that people say, well, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. They're always referring to presidential when they use that cliche, though. You're going to tell somebody, well, Anyway, they're not referring to school board. They're not referring to city council or mayor even though those elections are so much more important comparatively speaking. I know some people they vote that way. Um they don't vote in federal, but they do vote local and state, which hey, I get it. Again, I'll leave some stuff blank. So anyway, there's that. um so let's go to some candidates that I am excited about. Locally here in LA, for anyone that's here in LA, there's a couple candidates I am excited about. Kenneth Mejia, running for city controller, certified public accountant, progressive, leftist, ran as a green for Congress a couple years back, and he's the real deal. He has been funding billboards that show what is being done with our city budget. He was on this show before. He's been on this show a couple times, and he's got a real shot. He really did well in the primary. He won the primary by a lot. He almost won enough that there was not going to be a general. Like in our primaries here in California, the way it works is if you win by such a high percentage, then you just won. It's just over. But otherwise, the top two make the runoff. So he's running against the incumbent. We got to keep that momentum up. He did win big in the general, but his incumbent has a lot of corporate money. And so that was probably a wake up for his incumbent to go, oh, we got to start spending money. So I'm hoping Kenneth pulls it out. I was excited to vote for him. I was very excited to vote for Kenneth Mejia. If you are in Los Angeles, I highly recommend Kenneth Mejia. One of my two endorsements is on the ballot. Fatima Iqbal Zubair. She is running for state assembly in my district. I voted for her in the primary. I'm excited to vote for her again in general. She is up against a very big establishment Democrat who has also said racist and xenophobic things against her, which is very discouraging. But she's the real deal. She's a leftist. She's a teacher. She's an advocate. She's an activist. She's a big climate activist. She's been on this show a couple times. And she's the real deal. Last election, she had a lot of steam around her. That's a weird way to put it. She had a lot of steam. She campaigned exclusively in a sauna. No, but she was generating a lot of momentum. She was generating a lot of momentum. So here's what California did. They redistricted her. And by the way, this is like Democrats doing this. This isn't, I mean, when we think of like gerrymandering and redistricting, we usually just think of Republicans, which yes, Republicans do that a bunch, but Democrats do it too. And when Democrats do it, they're trying to push the lefties out. At the end of the day, it's let's make sure lefties are as far away from power as possible. Wall Street team R, okay. Wall Street team D, okay. Lefties, let's keep you out. So they redistricted Fatima. She was able to move into the new district to keep up what she built. So she was lucky. And you know what's interesting? They did the same thing to a DSA member named Summer Lee out near where my folks live in Pennsylvania. So it goes on everywhere. It goes on all throughout the country. So just something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind. So I'm excited for Fatima. I'm excited for Kenneth. There's some other progressives running in different districts, but I can't vote for them. Hugo, Uneses, those are other progressives running for city council in Los Angeles, but I'm not in their district, so I'm not able to vote for them. But I hope they win. I certainly hope they win. But unfortunately, I can't do anything other than say, hey, they're good. And again, look at the Knock LA voter guide for more information on all those candidates. Now, in my district, we're going to talk about my district. And you might think, Ron, I don't live in your district, but there's still some lessons to be had here from a thematic standpoint. In my district, the second endorsement I gave, I only endorsed, well, I guess technically I endorsed Kenneth. So yeah, I endorsed Kenneth Mejia. So I guess I've given like 3. I endorsed Kenneth Mejia. But the other main endorsement I gave as far as like my district specific goes was to Brian O'Dega. Now, Bryant did not make it out of the primary. He was running for my city council district. He did not make it out of the primary, unfortunately. And we had two candidates, Tim McOsker and Danielle Sandoval. Now, both candidates have there are some concerns, and the Knock LA voter guide actually did not have a recommendation. They said no recommendation. Um, Tim McOsker, he has done some good things locally as far as land conservation, as far as some union work, and as far as community garden and farming. So he has some good things locally about him. And uh, honestly, he seems like a genuinely good guy who wants to help this district. And when you're talking local politics, again, local politics is a lot different than federal or state. So that stuff does make a difference when you're picking a city council guy. You know, I have a feeling if me and Tim talked about national and international politics, we disagree on a good bit. He's more just kind of establishment Dem. We would probably disagree on some things, but he's not running for Congress or Senate. He's running for city council, so it's kind of a different animal. Now, that being said, there's still some concerns with that guy. He helped out the police unions a lot back in the day. That's very concerning. I asked him point blank, I said, would you have supported 4118? That was an ordinance here that allows cops to brutalize homeless people even more. It was sold under the guise of keeping schools safe. He said he would have voted for it. So, I appreciate his honesty. And we had a discussion as to why. It was a constructive discussion. But, I don't like the fact that he would have supported that. And another concern I have with him is some of the local endorsements and people he has accepted as collaborators. I won't go into like a ton of detail there because this is getting really insider baseball. But he has some establishment ties and establishment money that is very concerning. And he's the establishment candidate, whereas Danielle was more of the leaning progressive candidate, although I wasn't really convinced by her leftist bona fides. She has some skeletons in her closet as far as her votes on the neighborhood council. She voted against the minimum wage at one point. That's not all that lefty. And why did she do that? Well, she's a small business owner and she's a restaurateur. And something came to the surface recently that she was involved in some wage theft from some of her employees. And this has been going on for years. And when she was confronted about it, her explanation was very disappointing, to say the least. Instead of taking accountability and trying to fix it right away, she deflected blame and was defensive. And the issue still has not been resolved. Now, again, if this was something that happened a month ago, then maybe you ask yourself, okay, this could have just been some messed up clerical thing, and this is just sort of an attack on her. But this has been going on for years, still hasn't been resolved. So, and again, the accountability that she took for it was very disappointing. This cost her multiple endorsements. A lot of people dropped their support of her. And I think that's the main reason why Knock LA said no recommendation. And they brought that up. They're like, look, the wage theft scandal. I mean, if somebody is stealing from their employees, and that's what wage theft is, by the way, that is stealing from your employees. If someone steals from their employees, what do you think they're going to do when they get more power? Isn't that concerning? Especially when they don't take accountability in this case. So that's a big concern. And I have concerns about the other guy too. Now, the one situation where I have a little bit of solace is I think that either one of them will be better than what we have now in my district. My district is currently represented by a representative, a city council council member named Joe Buscano, who is very far right. He is very self-serving and corrupt. The stuff that he does in this district, it is just all to boost his brand, to boost his ego. He had a very embarrassing mayoral run where he got 1%, less than 1%, really. And then he just started riding Rick Caruso's coattails, which we're going to get into Rick Caruso in a second. So he is, I would say, probably the worst council member there is, and there's a lot of terrible ones. We recently had the national scandal that got national attention with Kevin De Leon, who still refuses to resign, by the way. So, you know, either one of them will be better than that guy. So whoever wins will be better than him, fortunately. So I guess that's a way to look at a positive, right? Which brings us to LA mayor. Speaking of races that have gotten national attention. Now, you guys know me. You know that I view local different than I view state and federal. Here in LA, we did have a good leftist candidate in the primary, Gina Viola. Unfortunately, she did not advance. So what do we have now? We have Karen Bass and we have Rick Caruso. Now, you might have heard me talk about this on Status Quo on Thursday. Rick Caruso represents a very particular brand of danger to Los Angeles. Rick Caruso is a billionaire real estate developer. He got his land through shady dealings and exploitation. He kicked a bunch of people out of their houses to build his little strip malls. He covered up 30 years of sexual abuse at USC. He's been a Republican his entire life up until January, where he registered as a Democrat for appearance sake. Again, our local elections in Los Angeles are nonpartisan, but if you don't get endorsements from different Democratic clubs and unions that have Democrats at the head, typically, you don't have a chance at winning. So it's basically a monolithic party, but which sucks. But that's just the way it is, and that's why someone like a Rick Caruso will be like, "I'm a proud Democrat." So he's now become part of the Democratic rot. He's just part of the Joe Manchin camp. And he will turn this city into a developer's playground more than it already is. He will take Garcetti's playbook, multiply it by 20, because he is more corrupt and has deeper pockets than Eric Garcetti, who is arguably the most corrupt mayor in the country as is. Karen Bass, not a great candidate. You know, Democratic establishment isn't going to really confront the police, and she said so. She wants to, continue to let the police situation be as out of hand as it is and continue to pump money into it. And but she does not represent the danger that Caruso is. She just doesn't. So I will very begrudgingly be voting for Karen Bass. I'm not thrilled about it. Will be a lousy mayor. But when it comes to local politics, there's a difference between a lousy mayor and somebody who is going to completely exploit and rip apart your city. We can handle a lousy mayor. I don't know if Los Angeles can handle a Rick Caruso. And I'm not trying to I know that sounds like pretty like, whoa, Ron, but I'm serious. Like that guy, what that guy is looking to do is it is worse than what we're going through now. Because here's the reason LA is going through what it's going through now. You have these developers, they use this city as a chessboard to maximize profit as much as they can. They'll do things, they'll sell stuff off to some oligarch wherever, then they'll use their foot soldiers, aka the police, to push all those people into an area, to push the homeless people into an area. Then they'll buy it back from the developer after they're like, oh, I guess it's not working out the way you planned. We don't know why. Well, they do know why. It's because they pushed all the homeless people into that area through brutal, inhumane tactics. So then they get the property back, and then they start gentrifying it, and they push the homeless people somewhere else. It's evil. There's a word for what that is. It's evil. That's what Rick Caruso wants to do times 20. Why else do you think he would spend nearly $100 million? He's getting close to $100 million, folks, for a job that he doesn't need. It's because he wants to make it even more of a developer's playground than it already is. Which only somebody as freaking connected and corrupt as that guy would be able to do. Even Eric Garcetti can't pull that off. But Rick Caruso could. Somebody brought up, and here's the thing. You guys know that I really despise, I absolutely hate babbling about other YouTubers. But I did it on Thursday because Cenk Uygur is supporting Rick Caruso. And we talked on Status Quo about how his logic is absolutely bogus. He's babbling about Biden and a $15 minimum wage. What does that have to do with mayor? Nothing. He's saying, oh, Karen Bass is an establishment Democrat. Well, guess what? Rick Caruso's saying he's a proud Democrat, Jake. He's an establishment Democrat, too. And he was a Republican. Does that make it any better? Well, he used to be a Republican for years and years. That changes things, does it? It doesn't change anything. And he's anti-choice. He's a billionaire real estate developer who has exploited poor people for years in this city through corruption. He covered up years of sex abuse at USC. I was wondering, why would someone like Cenk Uygur support this guy? At first, I thought maybe all the Katzenberg money had something to do with it, because a business mogul and media mogul like that guy would definitely benefit more from a Rick Caruso mayor than a Karen Bass mayor. But guess what? That was actually over speculation, because Katzenberg is supporting Karen Bass. Which, by the way, and I don't want to talk about Cenk Uygur too much, but that might be the first time in history. Can you imagine somebody being to the right of their donors? Has that ever happened? I think Cenk Uygur might be the first time in history he is to the right of his donors. Even Katzenberg, who, by the way, supported 4118, is certainly no friend to progressivism. But even that guy was like, oh, I'm not that evil, though. I'm not going to support Rick Caruso, even though it would benefit me more personally. I'm still going to support Karen Bass in this case. I mean, Karen Bass, it's not like Karen Bass is going to be the enemy of developers, for crying out loud. I mean, she's going to play it the establishment way, but not the way Rick Caruso, she ain't going to do what Rick Caruso's trying to do. So I don't know why Cenk Caruso. Oh man, that would be a super villain. I don't know why Cenk Uygur is supporting Rick Caruso, but I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe he's going full to the right now. Who knows? I don't know. And I don't want to. I don't want to spend a bunch of time projecting or editorializing about it, because I don't watch the show. But yeah, I saw those tweets where he's like, I'm voting for Rick Caruso because Karen Bass is establishment. I'm like, Rick Caruso is the establishment times 10. Rick Caruso is the status quo times 10. And I just described why. So Cenk Uygur either doesn't know that, which I find hard to believe, or I mean, I guess he just really wants, maybe he has some money in development or something like that. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know anything about the guy's personal finances. But, the only people who should be rooting for Rick Caruso are developers who want to exploit this city. Those are the only people. And for the most part, that's the only support he has. But when you pump $100 million into something, you can, you can trick a lot of people. And it doesn't help that Karen Bass, I don't think, has really run all that great of a campaign. So I don't know what's going to happen. Paul says, never okay to shame the homeless and stooge for land barons. A frickin' men. And yeah, I mean, you are really, by supporting someone like Rick Caruso, you are really saying, if you know all these things about him and are still supporting him, you're really saying, I truly hate poor people. I hate poor people that much that I'm going to let this person completely exploit my city. And I don't care, because I just want my gated community. I don't know if Cenk Uygur lives in a gated community or not. I have no idea. But, metaphorically, I just want things to look pretty outside of my gated community, and I don't care about anyone else. That's what you're saying when you support someone like Rick Caruso. That's what Joe Biscayno's saying when he gets behind Rick Caruso. And that's what Cenk Uygur is saying when he gets behind Rick Caruso. So, I don't know on what planet that would be considered progressive. I don't know on what planet. You can tell me. So that's what's going on where I'm at. That is what's going on where I'm at, folks. And that kind of goes, I hope from a thematic standpoint, you can you can kind of get some takeaways as to what to consider when you're voting for mayor versus when you're voting for Congress or Senate and all the differences there. Which, by the way, when it comes to those races, I got really nothing to be excited about there. Absolutely nothing. We have not had anyone who has been able to stand up to Gavin Newsom, who is an absolutely terrible mayor. But here's the problem there. The California GOP, there is a plan floating around in California, no pun intended with the floating around part, that would completely privatize our water supply and give it to Nestle. The California GOP is itching to do that. So basically, when you are looking at the race for California governor, if there's a Republican in the race, you have to go, okay, so I'm either choosing between a corporate blank suit Democrat whose dad was an oilman who used to give out fracking permits like they were candy, finally stopped that, finally, and is basically just a performative clown. That's what Gavin Newsom is. He's a performative clown. I either vote for that or I vote for starting the water wars. Because that's literally what that would do. If they privatize California's water supply, give it to Nestle, it would completely taint our water, completely. And it would just destroy this state. That's what would happen. So that's what you have to choose. That's what our system has gotten us. And that's why this system needs to radically change. Nobody should have to choose between those two things. That's brutal. And that's why every time I freaking fill out a ballot, I just look deflated and sad. And thank goodness there are a few things local and via ballot measures to be excited about. Thank goodness for that. That keeps hope alive. Because I honestly, if we just voted on federal stuff and nothing else, I think I'd lose my freaking mind. I think we all would. And by the way, I'm not the only person with horrible freaking circumstances. Every state has that. Most states do. Most states are like, well, gee, I either got to pick between this person who's going to continue this horrible status quo of a war economy and no health care and no educational opportunities, or I need to pick this person who wants to shock the gay out of people and wants to frickin', who knows, take your pick. But what a disgusting country this is. So anyway, fortunately, locally, hopefully you have some excited stuff to be about, to have locally. Let me get to the chat here. I'll start with Rockfin. What's up, Roger? Ron, I am trying to get ballot initiatives from all over the country ready for 2024. Reason presidential elections have high voter turnout. They don't have high voter turnout, Roger. They do have higher in comparison, but they don't have high vote. We do not have high voter turnout anywhere. Presidential has higher than others, sure, but it is still very low voter turnout, especially when you compare it to other parts of the world. But I see what you're saying. Support and join ballot measure for California Medicare for All, which you give a website. It's hc4us.org. Absolutely. I mean, I support state efforts for single payer healthcare. I think that is likely going to be the only way we get it federally. And again, that's not the most ideal way. I would rather see federal Medicare for all just be passed right away. But let's be honest about what we're up against for that to happen. You would pretty much need to flip the entire Congress. You would need to, well over 300 people, you would need to replace with leftist candidates. I think at some point you need to be realistic about the chances of that happening anytime soon or ever. Those chances are very, 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 very slim. Especially since what few supposed allies we have, they don't even work together as a bloc. We're told we got 6 allies, and they don't even work together as a bloc when they need to. So, yeah, I support a state-by-state approach because that might be our only frickin' choice. Because when you get something like single-payer healthcare in this, it chips away at the insurance companies, which chips away at their power because, oh, guess what? The insurance companies can't operate in California the way they used to or New York the way they used to. So they have to either adapt or they're done. So you do that in enough states, we're going to get federal Medicare for all. And that might be our only strategy. That might be the only way to really get it. So, yeah, I support that. Also, since you were talking about housing, maybe you can file for one to outlaw private equity and corporate real estate developers from owning housing, hospitals, nursing homes, medical facilities, clinics, etc. Um, I mean, okay, yeah, that sounds great, but I mean, what would be the way to do that? You know. Also, if you are not excited about the candidates, just leave it blank. Yeah, I mean, I leave stuff blank all the time because it's like, if there's really nothing to vote for, then just I'll let my community decide. Like it's just like I can't justify giving either of these people a vote. Especially here in California, a lot of times it's just two corporate Democrats. So it's like, okay, so here's a corporate Democrat, here's another corporate Democrat. They're all going to vote the same way. And again, it depends on the race too. There's certain races where it's like, okay, if this was a race for Senate and I know these two candidates are going to vote exactly the same way all the time, I'm leaving it blank. But if this is a race for city council or mayor and it's local and it's all about what they're going to do locally, well, then I'm more inclined to vote for somebody. You know, it's not as big of a deal as if you and your city council member don't agree on every national issue because they don't really have any impact on that. It is a big deal if one city council member is looking to actually help your community and the other's looking to exploit it. Then it's a bigger deal. And I can, again, and I'm talking hypotheticals here, but I could justify in this hypothetical, I could justify voting for somebody. Let's say there's a candidate, they do good stuff in the community, they support decent initiatives in the community, and they want to use the city council seat to advance those things. I can excuse that maybe we don't agree on every single topic. You know what I mean? Like I'm more likely to excuse something like that because, you know, they're not running for Congress. They're not running for uh Senate. They're running for city council. And I'd rather have that. I'd rather have someone who, okay, maybe we don't agree with everything on everything if we just talk politics together, but they're going to do a good job in that job, be it school board or city council or whatever. I'd rather have that than somebody who can fricking recite a progressive a progressive platitude playbook and then has no idea what the fuck they're doing when they get the gig and they don't do anything. You know what I mean? And again, I'm talking hypotheticals. I can't give you a concrete example of something like this. Usually, if somebody is all about lefty policies, they probably already are engaged locally if they're running for city council, because running for city council is a selfless thing in comparison, unless you're a developer exploiter. But if you're somebody who genuinely wants to do the work in the community, it's a pretty thankless gig. It's not as glamorous as running for a federal office, running for Congress or Senate. It's not as glamorous as that. That's why a lot of times, I get tons of people who they're running for office, and I say, hey, if this doesn't work out, would you consider running for something local? A lot of times I get the answer is no. And then when you ask them why, really what their answer boils down to is, I won't get as much attention that way. It'll be harder for me to build my podcast if I ever actually did something for my community. So, I try not to judge, but it's a little frustrating to hear. So thank you for the Rockfin tip, Roger. Much appreciated. Let's see. What else are y'all saying? Let me go over to the YouTubes. Double K, thank you so much for your very generous super chat contribution. Again, Minnesota Mentat. Where you at, Minnesota Mentat? Am I going to see you when I go to Minneapolis in 2023? Minneapolis is on the bill. On the bill. I have a policy that includes Ron going to Minneapolis, where I will go to Minneapolis and you will hopefully come to the show. All right. So have you covered? But anyway, yeah, I don't have the Minneapolis date booked yet, but it's going to be in summer of 2023. Think June 2023. And I should have those announcements soon. Hopefully, before the end of the year, all my 2023 tour dates will be announced, or at least most of them. But anyway, Minnesota Mentat, have you covered how many folks are involved with in his cannabis possession release of prisoners? Uh, have you covered how many folk involved in his cannabis possession release of prisoners? So I don't know exactly what you're pointing to here. I'm guessing, and this is just a guess, you're referring to Joe Biden's thing where he did that release of low level cannabis offenders, and apparently nobody is even in jail for that, which is kind of like, okay, dude, this is, I'm still glad that it happened. And the reason I'm still glad that it happened is because it will erase a bunch of people's records. And that will help people when they go to apply for a job. That will help people when they want to get an apartment. That will help people when they want to get a loan if they want to buy a house. So I'm still glad it happened. But yeah, it doesn't actually. I believe it was like, well, no one's actually getting out of jail, or I don't know if it. I mean, again, this happened a little while ago, so all the details aren't necessarily fresh in my short term. But yeah, I think that no one was actually in jail for that, at least not at the level that they would have been let out. If it even gets one person out of jail, I'm 100% for it. You know, Again, I just wish it went further. So I'm assuming that's what you're referring to, Minnesota Mentat. That's my take on it. Everybody who was like wetting themselves, like Dark Brandon, which I think that meme is so freaking stupid, but that's a different story for a different day. Everybody who was wetting themselves over it, it's like, well, it didn't actually really do that much, but I'm still glad that it will help some people get that stuff off their record. So that's my take on it. Paul Horn Shillings, what's up? In politics, always look the grift horse in the mouth. I love that. In politics, always look the grift horse in the mouth. Amen to that, Paul Horn. I am with you. Up, it jumped on me. Let me go. K Faye Garrett, what's up, K Faye? You have the cool, or excuse me, Cat Faye. Got to push my glasses up. I saw an Cat Faye Garrett. I think I've called you K Faye before though, because it's like when you're just looking at it, you want to say K Faye, but that's which is totally not your name. Cat Faye is. I apologize now and forever if I ever accidentally say K Faye. But Cat Faye Garrett, thank you very much for the super chat contribution. Thank you for the pair. You know I love pairs, and I love pairs that are giving me a fist bump. So thank you very much for that. Teresa, you give me a dancing pair. I love dancing pairs too. Teresa, do you say it Teresa or is it pronounced differently? Let me know. But Teresa273, thank you very much for the super chat contribution. You help keep the show on the air. And thank you very much for the dancing pair. Let's see. Lynn B, what's up? I just filled out my ballot listening to your stream. Voted for Tim Ryan for Senate since his opponent, JD Vance, thinks divorce should be illegal. Sad. So you frickin' Lynn, you got to live what I was talking about. You got to live what I was talking about. You're like, well, I could either vote for this blank suit, terrible candidate, or this guy who wants to outlaw divorce. Lucky me. And this is why I am against going hard on voters and am for going hard on systems. Because, I'm not going to sit here and, yell at somebody who votes for harm reduction based on where they're at. I'm also all it goes both ways though, by the way. If you're hard on people who if you're saying like, hey, you got to vote harm reduction, but then you're hard on people who vote third party, well, that's wrong too. You should go hard on systems, not voters, because there's plenty of good strategic reasons to vote for third party. This is coming from a guy who votes third party most of the time. Most of the time I vote third party. Pretty much all the time in California, because usually there's either two corporate Democrats or a peace and freedom candidate or a green, and I vote for the peace and freedom or the green. That's what I do. And I also recognize the reality that we need to change the rules for third parties to really be viable. Here's what a lot of people like to forget, though. We need to change the rules for Dem entering to be viable, too. Either way, we need a rule change. A lot of the people who are like Dem enter, they ignore the idea that it's like, well, wait a second. The Democratic establishment spent $50 million trying to kick out grassroots challengers. They still have all these rules about the DCCC and the DNC, and if you don't follow them, you're done. So they're making sure they keep you away from power. So the rules need to change. We need to get money out of politics. We need to have more proportional representation. We need to have different voting choices like ranked choice voting. So, and these are, debates worthy of having. But all I'm saying is voter shaming goes both ways. So, so my thing is go hard on systems, not on voters. I'm going to go hard on the system that gave you Joe Biden and Donald Trump. I'm not going to go hard on the people that had to figure out how to handle it and what to do about it, no matter what they did. That's just me. Let's see. Omar, what's up, man? Ron, I don't blame the politicians. I do. I blame the overweight voter that never bothers to fact check and instead eats whatever the media spew. I mean, yeah, I'm with you that there's some personal accountability here. But again, the system's set up to suppress the vote. The system's set up so that you can buy an election. The system's set up to make sure that votes really aren't even counted properly most of the time. The system's set up so that the Wall Street sponsored allies stay in power. I am infinitely more angry at that than I am at people who just vote against their own interests because of propaganda. And part of the reason that happens is because we have limitless money in politicians. Or excuse me, we have limitless money in politics. Limitless money as far as political advertising. Our campaign seasons go on forever and a day. So I blame that more than I blame the regular person who is just trying to survive. I mean, again, and this gets into capitalism too, because so many people, they're working 2 to 3 jobs just to keep their head above water. Like how are they going to have time to look at? I mean, dude, we just went over how freaking filling out your ballot it's a homework assignment. It's a freaking homework assignment. You got to read all the nooks and crannies about these bills. You got to make sure it's not trying to trick you. And guess what? It's going to be most of the time. I mean, and that's what you have when you have a government who actively works against its people. We are an empire. We have a war economy. It benefits a few and screws over everyone else. And the job of the establishment is to get people to passively accept it. That's just definitionally what the United States is. So when you have a system that works that way, you always got to be on your toes. So yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I'm not saying that there's no such thing as personal accountability, but I blame the system way more than any person. So that's me. But thank you, Omar, for your super chat contribution. Thank you, Lynn B. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Cat Faye Garrett. Thank you, Paul Horn Shillings. Thank you, Minnesota Mentat. Thank you, Double K. And over on the Rockfin, thank you very much to Roger and to Over the Road Trucker. What's up? How are you, Over the Road Trucker? Good to see you. Thank you for the Rockfin tip. You help keep the show on the air. Rest in peace, Jerry Lee Lewis. So there have been, I'll be honest, I haven't really checked the news much today. Is it for sure this time? I mean, because there were those reports that he died and he hadn't died. Is it for sure? Okay, now a bunch more places are reporting he did in fact die. Yeah, I mean, Jerry Lee Lewis, there's some kind of concerning things about that guy out there. And I don't know if we'll ever find out the truth, but I have a feeling we won't. But I recommend, if you're curious about some of the stuff that's out there regarding Jerry Lee Lewis, I recommend looking up. There's a podcast called Disgraceland. Look up that podcast and look up the episode on Jerry Lee Lewis and listen to it. Decide for yourself. I'm not gonna, we're wrapping up here, so I can't really get into Jerry Lee Lewis talk right now. But listen to that podcast, make your own decisions. That was such a like do your own research moment. But sorry, that's what I got. But yeah, Jerry Lee. Regardless of what may or may not be true as far as his life, which I mean, I'll give you this teaser. He may have gotten away with murder a couple times. I don't know if we'll ever know for sure. We may never know for sure, but he might have. We may never know for sure. But it looks like he did in fact die. I mean, there were reports that he died. We don't even know for sure. From a talent standpoint, he's one of the best there ever was. Guy was immensely talented. Don't agree with much of his views. I don't agree with his far right, religious views and stuff like that. But he was one of the best at the rock and roll piano there's ever been, ever. A very disturbed guy, though. A very disturbed guy. There's some things about him that we do know for sure, without a doubt. And the guy was very disturbed. And yeah, but killer musician, no doubt about that. And I do recommend, if you're curious more about Jerry Lee Lewis, I recommend that episode of Disgraceland. I don't want to say anything else about it, but I do recommend it. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Over the Road Trucker, and rest in power, Jerry Lee Lewis. And yeah, and thank you, Over the Road Trucker. Thank you, Roger, for the Rockfin tips. You help keep the show on the air, and of course, over on the YouTube. Thank you, Omar. Thank you, Lynn B. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Cat Faye Garrett. Thank you, Paul Horn Shillings. Thank you, Minnesota Mentat. And thank you, Double K. Couple announcements before we sign out. Tour dates. I got them. We're going to be announcing more soon. Midwest US, keep your eyes and ears open. UK, keep your eyes and ears open, especially Edinburgh Fringe Festival. I'm trying to come to the Fringe in 2023, and I'll for sure be doing a show in London too. I mean, I can't go out there and not do a show in London, and we'll see. I might do some other stuff, still planning it out. But here's the deal. Here's the deal, my friends. Here's the tour dates that we got so far. January 28th, Tucson, Arizona. That's not just a stand-up show. It's a stand-up show, and we're going to be screening my short film, Loner, that is meant to be a series. Technically, it's a pilot, but I just say short film because that's a lot easier when you're having a screening of something. You don't hear people say, catch the screening of my pilot. It's a short film. Same difference in this context. So come check it out. The film is only 12 minutes long, so it's not like this is going to be some like obscenely long event where you're watching like a full movie and getting a full stand-up show. The film's only 12 minutes. So Tucson, Arizona, come check it out, January 28th. Or if you want to take a trip to Tucson, Arizona, if you use the promo code Lucy at checkout, and this is for a limited time only, I'm doing early bird specials for my shows. If you use the promo code Lucy at checkout, you get $5 off tickets. So pretty good deal. Those are really cheap seats. I know that it's a tough time and you only have so much disposable income out there. And I know it's a lot to ask people to come out to a show. I know that. So I want to make an early bird special where if you want to come see me, but funds aren't super lush, you can get a discount. So got an early bird special going on. So grab tickets now. By the way, makes a great holiday gift, does it not? So ronplagone.com, you can grab those tickets. San Diego, February 17th and 18th. You can get those shows are free, actually. But you can find out more information at my website, ronplagone.com. So ronplagone.com. Those are free shows, February 17th, 18th. I really love being able to have free shows. Like that's a really special thing. And I would do that as often as I possibly could. But what needs to happen is for that to be possible, a venue would have to give me some kind of a guarantee because it's touring needs to be sustainable, right? If I won the lottery, I would just do free shows, or I would do like the cover charge would be very low and all the proceeds would go to charity. If I won the lottery and had millions of dollars for the rest of my life, that's what I would do. Unfortunately, that's not my situation. So I need to survive, folks. You know how that goes. So yeah, but that would be a really cool model if I could pull it off everywhere. Anyway, Romplaco.com for tickets, Romplaco.com. Yeah. So I wonder if I could. Anyway, I'm overthinking shit. Yeah, I'm just kind of speculating now. And by the way, we'll be announcing some Los Angeles dates. I'm trying to go to Edinburgh to work on my hour, so I'm gonna workshop that hour in Los Angeles beforehand. So there will be some Los Angeles dates coming up in 2023. I'm gonna go to the American Midwest, the main cities that I'm about to lock in: Minneapolis, Minnesota; Madison, Wisconsin; Chicago, Illinois. I don't know why I'm saying the states. I think you guys know. I can just say Minneapolis, Madison, Chicago. I think you guys get it. Detroit, Indianapolis. That doesn't mean those are going to be the only cities. Those are just going to be the main cities. P Stuff says buy Ron lottery tickets. Yes. But guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your super chat contributions. You help keep this show alive. And here is my final announcement before we sign out for the day. Here's the deal. Get Your News On with Ron is going to be switching to Sundays. And you're like, Ron, today's Saturday. Yeah, I know. We did a special Saturday show. This is normally the patron stream / Rockfin Premium stream, but I wanted to do a special election show, and I figured I should do it now because then we're going to be switching, kind of switching the day up. For people who listen to the podcast, you won't really notice a difference other than the podcast is going to come out on Sundays. But for everybody who catches this live, whether you watch it on Twitter, YouTube, or Rockfin, Sunday is going to be Get Your News On with Ron Day. We're going to do the regular Get Your News On with Ron stream. And then after, we're going to do the patron stream. Now, the way my patron streams work, the stream goes out to everybody. So everyone can just stick around and watch it. If you are a patron, that's awesome. But if you're not, you can still watch it. That's great. And you can join my Patreon for as low as $1 a month, by the way. But the replay is only available for patrons and Rockfin Premium members. That's the way it works. So, you can only get the replay if you're a Patreon or a Rockfin Premium member, but the stream goes out to everyone. So regular Get Your News On with Ron stream starts at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then the patron stream will follow immediately after. And that's what's going to happen from now on. So we're switching it up. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to be doing some fill-in stuff over at Status Quo when Jordan takes his break. So, and I'm not sure, I'm not sure what all the schedule is going to be, but I'm going to be on there more. Right now, I'm there on Thursdays, but I'm going to be there more for a little while. So that's the reason I'm doing it. But I think I'm going to keep it that way. I kind of like the idea of just doing like one big day. You know what I mean? So Sunday is going to be Get Your News On with Ron Day, unless my road dates, which will happen when I'm on tour and I have to switch it up, I'll do so. But when I'm not on tour, Sunday, Get Your News On with Ron Day. When I am on tour, I'll be letting you know. And we'll switch the day in most cases. Chances are the day will just be Monday instead or something like that. So that's the Get Your News On with Ron news. So thank you all so much. Again, let me give the thank yous. Omar, Lynn B, Teresa, Kat Faye Garrett, Paul Horn Shillings, Minnesota Mentat, Double K. Thank you so much for your super chat contributions. You keep this show on the air. And over on the Rockfin, Roger Meadows, Over the Road Trucker. Thank you so much for the Rockfin tips. You help keep this show on the air. Guys, this has been a special election talk stream. I hope it made you feel a little bit better. I hope it made you, if you were filling out your ballot, I hope you're like, yeah, this is something we all go through. And this really sucks, but we're not going to stop fighting for a better tomorrow. And fighting for a better tomorrow doesn't just include filling out a ballot every 2 years. It includes strikes. It includes protests. It includes community engagement. It includes local activism. It includes, you get the idea. So we're all doing our best, and that helps. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for your generosity to help keep the show on the air. I will see you guys next Sunday. And I'm looking forward to that. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace, love, and a general strike.